Once upon a modern time, there's this dynamic duo, not Batman and Robin, but close, a father-daughter team scaling the dizzying heights of Troll Hills in western Norway. Why? For kicks, obviously. Because when you live in Norway, climbing troll-infested hills is just your average family bonding activity. Dad, Tobias, is not just any dad. He's a folklore enthusiast who probably spends too much time in the mythology section of the library. He tells his daughter, Nora, about these legendary trolls that used to roam around but turned into rock statues because they forgot to wear their sunscreen and got hit by sunlight. Classic troll mistake, happens all the time. Tobias believes these rock stars are still throwing secret concerts in the Norwegian mountains. Nora, the daughter, is all ears, her imagination probably already casting trolls in her future bedtime stories. Fast forward 20 years, and Nora has traded in her troll dolls for dinosaur bones, becoming a paleontologist. Because of course, digging up the past is way cooler when it involves real fossils and not just her dad's tall tales. After months of playing in the dirt at an archaeological site, she strikes gold, or rather bones, which is basically gold for science nerds. Meanwhile, back at the Dovre Mountains, it's demolition day. Construction workers are there to play with big, explosive toys to make room for a metro station. Because who needs natural heritage when you can have convenience? A group of activists tries to play party poopers, chanting, "Save the mountains." But the construction chief, probably late for his coffee break, hits the big red button, and boom, mountain be gone. But wait, the plot thickens. Amidst the rubble, a roar echoes, and the ground shakes like it's trying to win a dance-off. Out pops a creature from the annals of mythology, proving that maybe, just maybe, Tobias wasn't so crazy after all. The construction workers, who were definitely not prepared for Jurassic Park auditions, do their best Olympic sprint, but alas, mountain debris plays gatekeeper and decides they're not leaving. The news hits the Norwegian armed forces like a text from an ex. The general, thinking he's suddenly in a sci-fi flick, sends out drones to get the 411. The prime minister, along with his advisor Andreas, who's there to look pretty and agree with everything, get the lowdown. Over 50 people playing hide-and-seek with a mythological beastie, and losing. Nora, in the midst of celebrating her groundbreaking discovery, literally, gets a surprise visit from a military chopper. Because when the PM calls, you don't send a text, you send a helicopter. She's whisked away to a room full of officials who probably couldn't tell a fossil from a rock band. When Nora suggests that maybe, just maybe, they're dealing with a prehistoric party crasher, the officials start laughing. Because obviously gas leaks are much more logical than a dinosaur or a troll playing peekaboo in the mountains. Andreas tries to add his 2 cents, probably wishing he'd paid more attention during Mythical Creatures 101. Picture this, a room full of government officials, scratching their heads over a mystery so big it could only fit in a Michael Bay film. Enter Sigrid, the tech whiz of the Norwegian Armed Forces, who's just about had it with the room's collective IQ. She slams down a video like a royal flush on poker night, showing a 150-foot-tall, shadowy figure emerging from the Dovre cave. The room goes silent, except for the sound of jaws hitting the floor. Finally, the penny drops. Norway isn't just famous for its fjords and fish, it's now home to a real-life monster mash. Meanwhile, in Lesja, a quaint little spot where the biggest excitement is usually watching paint dry, an elderly couple is enjoying their afternoon tea. That is until a roar shakes their spoons off the table. Thinking it's an earthquake, they dive into their safety vault like it's a Black Friday sale. Once the shaking stops, they emerge to find their home looks like it hosted a rock band's after-party. Back at the superhero headquarters, Nora, our fossil-hunting heroine, raises her hand like she's volunteering for a trip to Mars. "I'll check it out," she declares, ready to swap her archaeology brush for a monster hunting kit. The Prime Minister, probably thrilled to delegate the problem, appoints her as the scientific advisor on the case of the Norwegian Bigfoot. Andreas, the PM's advisor who secretly dreams of being the next Tolkien, escorts Nora to the site. En route, they swap stories like two people awkwardly trying to make friends at a party. Nora tells him about her childhood, painting a picture of her dad, Tobias, who took Troll Dad to a whole new level, believing in folklore a tad too seriously, ending up in a hospital for his troubles. Andreas shares his writer aspirations, revealing his work in progress about a monk with a unique combat technique, decapitation and projectile head-biting. Upon arrival, they're greeted by the sight of a house that's seen better days and Captain Chris Holm, who's as confused as a chameleon in a bag of Skittles. Despite combing the area, the creature pulled a Houdini, leaving no trace but destruction, and a spooky howl that would make King Kong blush. After interviewing the still traumatized elderly couple, who couldn't provide a sketch but did offer a soundbite straight out of a horror movie, Nora goes detective mode. She follows a mysterious smell to a giant footprint, only to find it's as lifeless as the plot of a recent Disney movies. No DNA, no monster cookies, nothing. With the investigation hitting more dead ends than a maze designed by a trickster, Nora decides it's time to call in the big guns. Her estranged father, Tobias, the man who once mistook family therapy for a troll convention. Now living off-grid like a hermit with an internet conspiracy theory degree, Tobias might just be the key to unraveling the mystery, assuming he's not too busy chatting with imaginary friends from the Middle Ages. In a twist that sounds like it was lifted from a fantasy novel rejected for being too far-fetched, Nora and her ragtag team, including Captain Chris and Andreas, decide to visit her dad, Tobias, the troll enthusiast. Because when you're dealing with mythical creatures wreaking havoc, who better to consult than a man who's devoted his life to proving that under every bridge in Norway, there's a troll waiting to pop out and say boo. They fly in on a chopper, because apparently that's how you make an entrance when you're about to confront someone who probably hasn't had visitors since the last census. Their welcome is as warm as a freezer, but Tobias eventually lets them in, probably deciding they weren't door-to-door salespeople after all. Inside, it's like stepping into a museum of troll lore, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone who's been labeled the local eccentric. They show Tobias the video, and he reacts as though he's just spotted Bigfoot at a backyard BBQ, muttering ominously, "They are here." Nora, ever the scientist, rolls her eyes so hard you can almost hear it. She's looking for facts, not a bedtime story. But Tobias is all in on his theory that trolls went extinct because they couldn't handle Norway getting with the times and embracing Christianity. He claims he was this close to blowing the lid off the great troll cover-up when society labeled him a few goats short of a herd. Undeterred, Tobias announces, "It's time for an adventure," because nothing says family bonding like hunting for mythical creatures that could squash you like a bug. Off they go in their chopper, off to prove that trolls are more than just an internet phenomenon. They land, and Tobias acts like he's just stepped into Narnia, marveling at how the landscape has changed. Meanwhile, Nora catches a scent she describes as hypernature, which honestly sounds like the name of a new energy drink. Then, plot twist. A massive troll decides it's time for its close-up, camouflaging itself, like it's trying out for a role in Predator. The team barely makes their escape, flying off in their chopper with footage that's bound to go viral faster than a cat video. They broadcast their findings, and suddenly, the news of trolls starts trending faster than the news of Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars. The Prime Minister, in a move that screams, "We're out of options," calls in the troops for a showdown that's sure to be talked about in military training courses as what not to do when faced with supernatural beings. Despite their arsenal, the troll shrugs off the attack like it's being pelted with popcorn, not bullets. In a move that's half bravery, half, "I've lost my mind," Tobias tries to soothe the savage beast with open arms. It's a touching moment, right up until another vehicle decides this is the perfect time for target practice. The troll reacts poorly, as you might expect, and Tobias ends up taking an unplanned flight, courtesy of a troll tail. As Tobias lays dying, he tries to impart some final wisdom, but alas, the moment is lost. Nora, in her grief, turns to her father's journals, discovering trolls have an aversion to church bells because, apparently, trolls are not fans of bell music. Armed with this new knowledge, Nora pitches the idea of using bell sounds as a weapon. The Minister of Defense is skeptical, probably wondering if they're now taking combat advice from fairy tales. But, with no plan B, the higher-ups give the go-ahead. Because why not? At this point, they're probably just as curious as anyone to see if a troll can be defeated by a bell choir, in a scene that could only be dreamt up by someone who thought Jingle Bells was too mainstream for a military operation. We're treated to the spectacle of 4 military helicopters, each sporting a church bell like the latest fashion accessory. They're flying towards the troll, bells ringing like they're late for Sunday service. Initially, it seems like they might have stumbled onto the world's most bizarre weakness, since Superman's aversion to a shiny green rock. But alas, this troll has apparently been binge-watching motivational videos on resilience because it quickly adapts and starts swatting choppers out of the sky like flies. So, Nora's grand plan to weaponize church music flops harder than a lead balloon, turning what was supposed to be a clever attack into a demolition derby showcase. And, as if to add insult to injury, news channels worldwide are broadcasting this fiasco live. Nothing like a bit of global humiliation to spice up your day. Following this debacle, the Prime Minister takes to the airwaves, delivering an apology that's about as comforting as a hug from a cactus. She admits her team's incompetence with the grace of a bull in a china shop, and declares a state of emergency, essentially telling everyone to pack their bags because the troll is on a sightseeing tour to Oslo. Nora, having spectacularly failed to save the day, is promptly uninvited from the cool kids table, while Andreas, in a plot twist no one saw coming, decides that resigning is the best course of action, since his opinions were about as impactful as a whisper in a hurricane. Cue the mass exodus from Oslo, with thousands of residents hitting the streets in a scene reminiscent of a Black Friday sale, minus the discounts. Amidst the chaos, Nora, still reeling from her less-than-stellar troll-taming attempt, decides to take one more look at her dad's journal. And what does she find? A name repeated more times than the chorus in a pop song: Sinding. Andreas, ever the fountain of useful information, casually mentions that Sinding is not just any prince, but the prince, living it up in the royal palace of Oslo and probably swimming in a pool of gold coins. With the enthusiasm of a detective on the brink of a breakthrough, Nora decides they need to crash the royal party, believing the palace holds the key to Trollmageddon. Upon arriving at the palace, they're greeted by Rikard Sinding, who seems about as excited to see them as someone who's just found out they've won the lottery and lost the ticket on the same day. He takes them in and decides to drop the bombshell that would make conspiracy theorists blush. Trolls are real. Tobias wasn't just a troll fanatic, he was onto something big. As it turns out, the royal palace is basically a fancy headstone for a troll king and his family, who were unceremoniously evicted from life by Christians with a penchant for overreacting. Sinding admits they threw Tobias into the loony bin to keep him from spilling the beans, which is just a tad overkill in the grand scheme of things. In a plot twist that makes about as much sense as pineapple on pizza, we learn that our troll king is just a misunderstood dad trying to get back to his kids in Oslo. Because, family reunions are a bit more complicated when you're a massive troll that's been duped and locked away in a mountain. Sinding drops this bombshell with all the drama of a daytime soap opera, revealing that all the Troll King wants is a cuddle from his offspring. Nora and Andreas, probably questioning their life choices at this point, are horrified, especially when they play a bit of CSI with a UV light and some very crispy troll bones. Cue the brainstorming session, where Nora, in a stroke of genius or madness, the jury's still out, decides the best way to deal with a giant troll is to give him a tan. Yes, you heard that right. The plan? Surround the big guy with tanning beds, because when you can't beat him, bake him. Sinding, proving he's all about that royal assistance, hands over the Queen's Prize pickup truck for their monster-melting mission. Meanwhile, Sigrid, who's apparently been binge-watching Hackers for inspiration, puts a pause on the government's plan to remodel Oslo via explosive redecoration. With the city's demolition on hold, our dynamic duo sets up the world's most bizarre tanning salon in an attempt to lure the Troll King to his UV doom. They dangle a troll child's skull like some macabre carrot on a stick, because nothing says, "Follow me," like the skeletal remains of your supposed offspring. As expected, the Troll King, upon realizing his family reunion is cancelled permanently, decides Nora and Andreas are to blame and turns his wrath towards them. It's like every bad breakup, but with more smashing and less texting. Back at Mission Control, Sigrid gets caught playing Missile Command on the government's computers. But before she can be reprimanded, the general, in a rare display of common sense, calls off the airstrike because, surprise, there are civilians in the line of fire. In a climax that's as dramatic as it is absurd, our heroes manage to trap the Troll King in their UV light rave, effectively turning him into the world's largest sunburn victim. But then, Nora, in a moment of compassion, or perhaps a sudden aversion to roasted troll smell, decides to halt the barbecue, urging the Troll King to retreat to the mountains, where SPF is optional. Too bad for them. The sun decides to make an appearance, turning the Troll King into the world's most literal rock star. As he petrifies, Nora gives him a tender touch, probably wondering if she should have just stuck to paleontology. While the rest of the team is popping champagne and patting themselves on the back, Nora and Andreas ponder the existential question of whether more trolls are lurking in the Norwegian wilderness. In a sentimental nod to her troll-obsessed dad, Nora names the area Tobias Boulder, which sounds like a rejected name for a rock band. Just when you think it's safe to go back into the mountains, The film throws us a curveball with a scene straight out of Troll 2 Electric Boogaloo, hinting at a sequel that promises more troll trouble on the horizon.